by Fort Hays Air Force Junior, ROTC.
Ready, cut. Forward, march. Colors, ho. Present, colors.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Forward, arms. Ready, cut. Order, arms. Pose. Colors turn, march.
You may be seated. Please help me welcome to the stage Ms. Rita Elpler. Welcome to the 40th Annual City of Columbus Holocaust Remembrance Program. My name is Rita Epler, and I will be serving as the Master of Ceremonies here today. We are grateful to have the opportunity, under the auspices of Mayor Andrew Ginther, to gather together in the City Hall of Columbus to observe this day of remembrance and honor the memory of those who perished in the Holocaust. This program is sponsored by the City of Columbus, Mayor Andrew Ginther, the Department of Neighborhoods, and the Columbus City Council in cooperation with JewishColumbus and the Holocaust Education Committee. We would like to recognize a number of distinguished members of our community that are present here today. Jose Rodriguez from the Office of Communications of City Council, Andrea Brookauer, the Director of Ohio Holocaust and Genocide Commission for the State of Ohio, and we thank you all for your continued support and attendance today. Thank you also to Kim Douglas, Director of the Department of Neighborhoods, to Fort Hays High School Color Guard, and to the Fire Battalion Chief, Michael Vedra. In addition, we recognize the Columbus chapter of Jewish War Veterans, past National Commander Herbert Greff, and all the other veterans that are present with us here today. From JewishColumbus, we would also acknowledge CEO Julie Tilson Stanley, the Director of Community Relations Council, Ori Katzoff, and the Board Chair of JewishColumbus Relations Council as well. And of course, thanks goes out to all of the survivors who are present with us here today. Thank you also to the staff from Jewish Family Services that have made it possible for the survivors in our community to be here today. I would ask for all of the survivors, along with any of their family members, including any second and third generations present, if able, to please stand and be recognized. We are grateful that you're able to be here today. Thank you very much. This Holocaust Remembrance Program is in large part about educating the next generation to be a more tolerant people and to remain ever vigilant. We therefore recognize the students that are present today in City Hall chambers that represent a variety of schools from around Central Ohio. We have with us here today students from Crystal Ray Columbus High School, Dublin Kaufman High School, Fort Hayes School, Hilliard, Davidson, Darby, and Bradley High Schools. Welcome. Many are up there. And now it is my pleasure to call upon Columbus City Council President Pro Tem Rob Dorrance to share a few words of welcome.
Good afternoon. It's a solemn privilege to be with you all here today as we observe Yom HaShoah and remember the atrocities of the Holocaust. Normally, Council President Hardin is here for this important day, and he certainly sends his regrets as he's traveling today and could not be here with you all. I want to recognize my colleague, Councilmember Dayakauer, who's also here with me today, and State Senator Craig and I were just at an event a little while ago, and now he'll be joining us here for the event as well. Certainly want to thank Judge Epler for emceeing here today, Gail Gray from our Department of Neighborhoods, who helps to organize this event every single year, and we certainly appreciate your efforts to make sure that this event and this recognition and observance is something that is central to us as a city. As Judge Epler already acknowledged, the family and the survivors that are here with us, thank you for taking the time to be here, and certainly for the young people who I think are some of the most important folks here to make sure that they hear the stories that this day is so important about. So important that we're here in council chambers. This is oftentimes we like to describe as the people's house, a place where we pass laws, keep our government running, and certainly discuss the issues of the day. But it's also a place where we observe our collective history as a community. Here in Columbus, and certainly the people that make up this city, the culture, the religions, and everyone who calls Columbus home and will call Columbus home. After the first Nazi concentration camps in Germany were liberated, General Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, issued an order that American troops that were not actively engaged in combat were to document the atrocities that had occurred at those camps, to ensure that not only were they witness to those atrocities, but they were documented for future generations to understand what happened there. Not only did they see that themselves, but Eisenhower personally visited a liberated camp on April 12, 1945. Later that day, he wrote to a colleague, quote, "The things I saw beggar description. I made this visit deliberately in order to be in a position to give firsthand evidence of the things, if ever in the future, there develops a tendency to charge that these allegations were merely propaganda." Eisenhower's words are striking today. As we live in an era in which there are more and more fringe voices denying that these horrific events occurred, and more are being given mainstream platforms to espouse these offensive views. Every year on Holocaust Remembrance Day, it's on all of us, not only to witness and understand the stories of Holocaust survivors and their families, but to continue to tell their stories. The words "never again" cannot be an idle phrase, but rather an active commitment to each of us as community leaders, as neighbors, and as human beings. Despite their best efforts, the Nazis couldn't destroy the Jewish people and those who stood with them in their commitment to one another. And I believe that that's a message that still resonates loud and clear today. Even as the world around us feels uncertain, and with the suffering so many both in our community and around the world present in our minds. Today, as we light candles and reflect on the program, let us commit ourselves to tell each of those stories. May the memories of the victims be a blessing. May the stories of survivors and their families guide us, and our actions prove that we have listened. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Councilman Dorans, for sharing your heartfelt words with us today. The Holocaust raises many questions about humanity, life, and faith. We are here today to recall, memorialize, and bear witness. We recall the events that led to the Holocaust in order to learn from them. We remember those who lost their lives. We remember those who survived and have carried the experience of the Holocaust through their lives. We remember those who helped bring an end to the Holocaust and those who liberated survivors. And we remember, lest we forget, and bear the consequences. The events that led up to the Holocaust were both simple and complex. The rise of Nazi Germany after World War I set the stage. The first concentration camp, Dachau, was established in 1933 as a prison in a process to instill fear in a population and silence political opposition. Boycotts of Jewish businesses began. Jews were barred from educational institutions, hospitals, professional employment, public parks, libraries, and even beaches. Anti-Semitism grew until the Jews were stripped of citizenship through the Reich citizenship law. Then the infamous Nuremberg laws of the Third Reich in 1935 segregated Jews by barring intermarriage, household employment, and the display of national symbols by Jews. By 1938, Jews were being encouraged to leave Germany. They were prohibited from jobs, and their businesses were registered. The world was not completely unaware of these developments, but the response of the world was put to the test on Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. This was a government-sanctioned terrorist action during the night and early morning of November 9th and 10th of 1938. Hundreds of synagogues throughout Germany were destroyed. Jewish businesses were looted and destroyed, and tens of thousands of Jews and opponents of the Nazi regime were interned in concentration camps. Sadly, as Elie Wiesel stated, the world did not believe, and the world stood silent. Kristallnacht is viewed by many as the tipping point toward the implementation of Hitler's final solution, the genocide that was the Holocaust. Without significant response from the international community to Kristallnacht, the discrimination and destruction continued. The Holocaust was a systematic process from discrimination to isolation from society, the stripping of civil and human rights, and ultimately, genocide. The destruction of a people does not occur overnight or without warning. Rather, it is a process that separates and demonizes a people until they are dehumanized. When the Nazis and their allies implemented the final solution, the Jews and other groups identified for extermination, such as homosexuals and gypsies, fit squarely into the category of others that no longer had a right to live. We are also here today to acknowledge that hatred is often contagious. When any group is discriminated against, it is usually just a matter of time until others are also included. Jews in Europe began to gradually understand the goal and the magnitude. But in the end, nothing could bring back the 6 million Jewish lives lost and the 11 million total lives that were taken by the Nazi regime. Jewish life in Eastern and Central Europe was all but decimated, and most of those that did survive had lives that were forever changed. Only 3 years after World War II, the General Assembly of the United Nations established the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As atrocities have continued in the aftermath of the Holocaust, as tragedies unfold every day in places like Ukraine, we are called upon to recognize, to recall, memorialize, and bear witness to their stories, to learn from them, and to work to prevent the continuation and repetition of atrocities. Collectively, as a society, and each of us as individual bears this responsibility. And as stated by Elie Wiesel, to remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all. Therefore, we are here today to remember, and our presence here serves as our testimony that we will not be silent. As of this month, the majority of the remaining survivors of the Holocaust, while just children then, are now more than an average age of 87, with many over the age of 100. All too soon, there will be no living survivors to provide firsthand accounts of their experiences. So now we must look to the children, to the second and even third generations, their children and grandchildren, to carry forward the legacy of their beloved family members. Today, we bear witness to the testimony of our guest speaker, Sandy Hackman. We are doing so in these halls of power, City Council chambers, where we sit today, to ensure that as a community, we will ensure that the silence and indifference will not persist. Sandy is the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. She is here to share her story about her mother and 3 older siblings that survived the Holocaust in Poland. During the Holocaust, her family endured unimaginable suffering and mass murder of family and loved ones. Out of their large extended family spanning 3 generations, only 10 family members survived. The courage and leadership of her grandfather was the reason for survival of those family members. Sandy has been a Holocaust educator for decades. She speaks to schools, churches, and civic organizations to carry on her family's legacy. Sandy was born in Columbus and is married to Dr. Mark Hackman. She is the mother of 2 children and 3 grandchildren. Today, Sandy appreciates the opportunity to tell her family's story. We welcome Sandy Hackman.
Thank you for having me. Hello, my name is Sandy Hackman. I'm a child of immigrants, first-born American, and a child of Holocaust survivors. I'm going to speak to you today about my mother, Tybal Brook, of blessed memory, and her life story growing up in a town called Trochenbrod, Poland. Trochenbrod was a unique town in Europe in that only Jewish people were forced to live there. Most of the inhabitants were Orthodox in observance. The only non-Jewish persons in Trochenbrod was the postmaster, Janina Lubinska, and her son. There was no grocery stores. They were all self-sufficient. No electricity, no running water, only outhouses and no cars. Everyone who was well off had a horse and carriage. The town ran 3 miles long, north and south. The houses were close to one another, and when I asked my mother when I was young, what were your houses made of? She said, "Stroy," And I said, straw like the 3 little pigs and you could huff and puff and blow your house down? Well, not exactly. But each side of the houses on each side of the road mirrored the opposite side, and behind them were forests all around. My mother said people love to come to Trochenbrod to vacation because they love the smell of the woods. It was a town where everyone took care of each other, and it was a nice place to live. My mother was the only girl for many years. She had 2 older brothers, then 2 younger brothers, and then later 2 younger sisters. It was her responsibility to keep up the housework, work the fields, plant and harvest the garden, and take care of the animals. Trochenbrod consisted of farmers, leather makers, bakers, tailors, a kosher slaughterer, and a tradesman like my grandfather, who I call Zeta. Her kitchen had a wood-burning oven that heated the house. There was no refrigerator. She had a trap door that led to the root cellar used to preserve the vegetables in the winter and preserve the vegetables in the winter and preserve the dairy in the summer. She married Shlomo Shamas after his 4 sisters married first. They had 3 children. First came my sister Fega of blessed memory, my brother Itzhak of blessed memory, and then my brother Gerald, Yankel. They loved playing at their grandparents' home because they had fruit orchards, cornfields to play hide and seek. The elders of Trochenbrod fought with the government to keep a railroad far away from their town in order for their livestock to be safe. It was good for most of Trochenbrod before World War II. Then August 23rd, 1939, Germany and the USSR, they signed a non-aggression pact. Well, 7 days later, on September 1st, Germany invaded Poland from the west, and 2 weeks later, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east. Trochenbrod became under Soviet rule once again. When the Russian army got to Trochenbrod, they started drafting the Jews. The Jews were used as a front line in order to shield their Russian soldiers. My Zeta found his 2 sons, Ben and Sam, and rubbed their feet with dandelions in order to make their feet swell. This way, the Russian army could not draft them because they couldn't wear their army boots. My Zeta's feet did not swell enough, so he chopped off 2 of his toes on his 1 foot. Growing up, when I would see his foot, I couldn't believe how my Zeta could chop off his toes by himself. The next problem was Zeta could not get to my mother's husband Shloima, nor to his youngest son David in time. The Russian army came to them first as their soldiers retreated, and they used Shloima, David, and other Jewish men as human shields in front of their soldiers. They were taken away and never returned. I remember my older siblings telling me that their father gave them candy, it was Passover, before he was forced to leave, and they cried and begged him to stay. On June 21st, 1941, Trochenbrod and the Legisht sister town called Legisht was ordered to combine population. The German invaded and the Soviets withdrew. The Nazis, along with Ukrainian hoodlums, terrorized Trochenbrod. All the land was confiscated as well as your animals. Everyone was robbed of all their valuables. Within 4 months, they were stripped of their entire livelihood. They were left without any food. Humiliation, terror, hunger, beatings, and murders was the way of life. One of the first things they did to show that they meant business is they pulled the rabbi who lived across the street from my mother, pulled him out by his beard, and killed him in front of everybody. Zeta tells my mom to send my siblings to the mayor's home in a nearby village in order to save their lives. She gave this family goose down comforters that she had made, linens, and a silver samovar in hopes that they would be safe there. The next day, Irv was returned home because the family was afraid because he had been circumcised and he had dark hair. Gerald was also sent back because he always cried. He was the baby. Faye stayed there with his family for about 3 months, working as a babysitter for this family. Faye missed mother and home. Then one day, the woman comes out and yells at Faye, "Get out now!" Faye jumped on the horse and wagon, and the woman took off in a fury. The woman rushed to the border of Trochenbrod and yelled, "Get off!" And the woman turned around with the wagon and rushed away. When Faye looked around, she was in shock at what she saw. There were dead bodies all around the street and in ditches. She screamed for mother. She had no idea where she was. Mother, along with the rabbi's wife and children, hid in a fake wall my mother had by the front door. My mother couldn't believe she heard Faye yelling and quietly opened the door and grabbed her and pulled her in. Then a Jewish man kept walking up and down the road yelling, "Jews, Yidden, come out of hiding. There's a ghetto being formed and everyone will be safer there than if you're caught while you're hiding." Mother was afraid to listen to this man for fear it was a trap for them to be killed, and she remained in hiding for a while. She eventually decided to come out and move to the ghetto so that she would not be hunted down. The ghetto was formed in the middle of the town. My mother and her 3 children, my 3 older siblings, moved to a very cramped house in the ghetto, holding so many people. My mom said that you couldn't even lay down. My mother's cousin came to her and said to her that this is the leather factory. I'm going to the leather factory with the rest of the family to make leather for Hitler and his army. So they were told they were going to carry yellow identification papers to prove they were part of the family, and they could stay there as long as their spouse was making leather for Hitler. Then came the first Action, August 11th, 1942. That was called a euphemism for the final solution: systematic extermination and mass murder of the Jewish people. Over 4,500 were killed from Trochenbrod to Legisht. In Trochenbrod, the killing fields started with 150 men on a truck. The Nazis said they were taking them to use them as laborers. The men began digging their own pits for burial. Then the men never returned, and the people of Trochenbrod feared for their lives and their family. My sister remembered a red moon that night, and the women screamed they thought it was a sign of blood. Remember, Trochenbrod did not have railroad tracks nearby to take them to the concentration camps. Bringing in trucks to take them to the trains was not an easy task, so the easiest way was to kill so many people at a time, load them onto the trucks, and take them to the killing fields to dig their own graves. Then they were forced to undress before the firing squad, stand there naked, and then fell in the pits one on top of the other. The Nazis did good when they could shoot 2 or more with a single bullet and not waste their ammunition. Nazis collected everything systematically from the murders: clothing, shoes, all possessions. My mother knew she had to work in order to survive. Her job was to collect the clothing after the brutal murders. But to her regret, she found her mother's and her sister Devorah's dresses while sorting through the pile of clothing. She cried and cried at the realization that her mother and sister had been murdered. My brother Irv collected all the shoes and tied the shoelaces together in pairs. All the garments were separated meticulously and placed in rooms for recording. The second Action was September 1942. It was Yom Kippur Day, the day of repentance, the most religious day of the year. The last of those who remained in Trochenbrod's ghetto and those who returned to pray with their brothers were taken to the pits and slaughtered. A covered truck came supposedly to take the children away to safety, thinking this was the children's best chance of survival. My mother told Faye and Irv, "Hurry, get on the truck." Soon after boarding, the kids heard that they were going to be taken away and gassed in the truck. Faye and Irv jumped off the truck from the other side and ran to Mother screaming of what they heard. Thank God they didn't stay on the truck. All the children of Trochenbrod were gassed to death with Zyklone B. Then time had run out. No one was safe now. Mother, Faye, and Irv and Gerald were taken to the pits to face the firing squad. Mother told the children, "As soon as you hear the shots, fall forward. Don't move. Don't make a sound, and maybe we will live." Mother said they laid there until dark, over half dead bodies and half dead bodies until they could escape. They made it back to the ghetto where the Polish man came up to my mother and he said, "Teibel, bist du Teibel? Are you Teibel? Your father is looking for you and he wanted to know if you're still alive." Well, this man told my mother how he was going to make her to escape and told him so she could catch up with the rest of the family. The man told my mother he had made an area so the children could run in and meet up with the rest of the family at the forest with her father and other siblings. Mother waited until dark to tell Faye, Irv, and Gerald that they were going to escape the ghetto, run as fast as they could without stopping. No looking back, no talking. She waited until nightfall because she didn't want them to worry all day. Mother said when they started to escape, the bullets were flying past their ears, but they were lucky they didn't get shot. A Ukrainian man saw my mother and my mother yelled for my siblings to run. The man caught my mother, beat her terribly with a club and kicked her and called her all kinds of names and until he thought she was dead. My Zeta and my Uncle Ben were covered nearby with potato burlap bags over them and then saw what was happening, got up, and the man ran off, and they carried my mother to the woods to meet up with the rest of the family, making 10 in hiding, 5 adults and 5 children between the ages 4 and 8. The third Action, December 1942, all the leather workers were told they made enough leather for Hitler, and they moved them to the synagogue, locked them inside. The Nazis burned the synagogue to the ground with all of my mother's family of leather workers inside. Our family heard the news and how the rest of the family had died and were murdered, and they were all overcome with shock. The Germans wanted Judenrein, free of Jews. By then, the Germans ordered Ukrainians to hunt all the Jews and anyone who escaped, and they were given a quota and they were paid per head. They instructed forest rangers to watch out for the Jews hiding in the forest. Life in the woods was very difficult. My Zeta always had a hammer, axe, and shovel. They dug out the dirt from underneath the roots of the trees so that 10 people could sit or lay there. They dug so deep they were in water. There were snakes, rats, bugs, lice 24/7, and they had no extra clothing but what they were wearing. The winters were freezing and the summers were sweltering. They collected Nazi helmets and used them for taking away the extra dirt. And they used them also for their waste, so no one would know they were around. They also had to keep the dogs, in order to keep the dogs away from the scent, they had to move from one location to another. They were always moving from one location to another, starting and digging again, 12 different locations in all, sometimes back to one location from locations before. Everyone had a job to do. My Zeta always knew when they should leave and when they should stay, with God's help and luck. Irv was a scavenger, a good runner, always looking for food. After midnight, he would go to the homes away from the forest and look for garbage for any food that was thrown away, like potato skins, skins from the fruit, bread, anything to eat. Food from the pigsties. He always made sure the trash looked untouched so families wouldn't notice that he'd been there. He went from one home to another in the summer, and he would steal from the gardens, take a leaf from a lettuce or a cabbage, just enough not to get noticed. My mother would cook whenever possible. She would take the potato skins and make a little fire, and the kids would grab and eat the skins even if it fell in the fire. My brother Irv could never eat potato skins after the war. Once my Zeta caught the cow and dried the meat and made the shoes from the hide. My Uncle Ben and my brother Irv were the ones who were all the lookouts. They would make it to the road and report back to my Zeta in which directions the Nazis were headed and how many cars and trucks they saw. Twice Zeta and Uncle Ben tried to kill my brother Gerald because he was the baby and he kept crying. They were afraid they would be discovered. My mother found them both times and begged them to save her son. She kept saying he was the glückliche Kind, a lucky child, and that's the reason why they were all still alive. She could always find a way to make things work. There were so many things to think of in order to survive. When it first snowed, you could not leave your bunker. If someone saw their tracks, you would soon be caught. They were always told to be quiet, but they were kids and they wanted to play. My mother said she used to use a sign language when she needed them to be still. In May of 1945, the airplanes were flying overhead, dropping pamphlets saying that the war was over. My mother thought, and my family thought it was a trick, and they stayed in the forest for 3 months longer until my Zeta found out it was true. After the war, it was a difficult time for those who lost their families and wondering if there was a chance anyone was still alive. It was an eerie feeling not to see young children around. Hitler murdered 6 million Jewish people. 1.5 million were children. 5 million were handicapped physically and mentally. Roma, gypsies, homosexuals, resistant fighters, Soviets, Polish civilians, Yugoslavians, Jehovah's Witnesses, and the righteous Gentiles. My Zeta and family had gone to a town called Kivritz to find an apartment for everyone. My mother found material and made suits for my brothers and dresses and necklaces for the girls, so all of a sudden they could feel lebendig, they could feel alive. My mother heard that the Haganah Zionist youth group movement was getting children to go to Palestine. Mother was hesitant to send Faye and Irv to join the Haganah, and maybe they would live. She thought maybe they would live. So they ended up on the ship the Exodus, which is a story for another time. My family, except for my siblings, traveled to a DP camp, or it was called Displaced Persons Camp in Bindermichel-Linz, Austria. These camps were formed for the survivors to feel and stay safe until they could get appropriate visas and paperwork to leave and go to another country. My Zeta had a brother in Columbus, Ohio, who left in the early 1900s, and he sponsored the family to come to Columbus, Ohio. My father was a survivor of Tarnopol, which was south of Trochenbrod. He had lost his wife and 2 children and entire family. My father was there at a DP camp as a DP camp policeman, as was my Uncle Sam. My mother and my dad married in Bindermichel and were very happy. On November 20th, 1947, My family traveled by the ship SS Marine Tiger and arrived in the United States, in New York. My mother was so happy to be in America, she literally got on her knees and kissed the ground. My mother told me my mother always would say how fortunate she was to live in America, where she was free to practice her religion, not be persecuted. She got her citizenship and always told me to make the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Give me a second. Sorry. I was the first American born to our family of immigrants. My father and mother and Gerald and I lived on Rich Street in a small duplex, and my Zeta lived on the other side. My first language was Yiddish. My mother finally found Faye and Irv through the highest organizations. She sent letters to Faye and Irv and bribed them to come to Columbus, Ohio. My sister and my brother arrived in Columbus April 5th, 1949, and I was already born. We were so happy to all be together. 5,000 people who lived in Trochenbrod, they say only 33 survived. Well, 10 was my family. This was about bullying. Hitler wanted an Aryan race, and he was an Aryan himself. We must all learn to get along. We're all different on the outside, but we're all the same on the inside. We all look different, but that's what makes us all special. When I talk to students, I tell them to get their education so they can make rational decisions and know what's right from wrong. You are our future generation. I know it may sound silly, but someday you will have a family and you'll want to make a life better for them, as I want for my grandchildren to grow up and understand all the differences and appreciate life. I believe as adults, we're all teachers, giving our children lessons to shape their lives and to be truthful, honest, faithful, and loving and caring adults. To stand up to bigotry, hatred, and anti-Semitism, discrimination of all kinds, and everything that's evil. I look to all of you to make a better place for you and your families. So by me coming here to tell you of my family's atrocities and what they faced and what they endured should not have been in vain, and it should never be forgotten. Thank you, and bless each and every one of you. Thank you. I'm sorry.
You have done us the justice. Please don't. Thank you, sweet. Can you bring her absolutely? You made it for me. You did.
Thank you, Sandy. The experiences of the Holocaust and those who survived Nazi persecution are in danger of becoming distant memories and ones that can too easily be set aside from our daily lives. We are privileged to bear witness to your story today and to honor the memory of your family. Thank you. To honor the memory of the 6 million Jews that were murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust, Rabbi Rick Kellner, Senior Rabbi at Congregation Beth Tikva, will present 6 survivors to light candles. We welcome family members to join the survivors as they light candles if they wish. In addition to the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, there were also 5 million other individuals that were murdered by the Nazis, including trade unionists, people with disabilities, gays, gypsies, and Christians. There were also non-Jews who, despite the grave risk to their own lives, were willing to shelter Jews that were being hunted by the Nazis. Rabbi Kellner will present 5 representatives to light candles in memory of the 5 million individuals murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. We begin our candle lighting ceremony with the song Eli, Eli, written by Hannah Senesh and performed by Rabbi Kellner. Hannah Senesh was a young woman from Hungary. She moved to Israel and then volunteered to return to Europe to save Jewish lives. She parachuted into Yugoslavia, went to Hungary, and was then discovered by the Nazis and executed. She was known for her heroism and her poetry. Rabbi Kellner.
Over the past several weeks, I have been immersed in Holocaust education. While this is not a surprise to my colleagues and friends who are gathered here with us today, because I spend much of my time as a rabbi doing this work as I partner with many of our public schools to enrich Holocaust and anti-Semitism education. This experience that I've had in recent weeks was different. I read Elie Wiesel's memoir, Night, with my 14-year-old daughter. While she knew about the Holocaust from conversations we have had since she was young, this was her first real exposure to the atrocities perpetrated by the Nazis and the personal account of a survivor. While I had read Elie Wiesel's story when I was younger, it has been more than 30 years since I immersed myself in his harrowing eyewitness account of what had taken place in his hometown of Siget and in Auschwitz and at Buchenwald. I had forgotten that he was liberated from Buchenwald. When I read those pages, I said to my daughter, "Your great-grandfather, Sam Kotzen, was a GI in the U.S. Army, and he helped liberate Buchenwald." I said to her, "Is it possible he helped to liberate Elie Wiesel?" I also told her that he had his camera with him, and as we learned this morning, he took General Eisenhower's words to heart. He photographed the horrific scenes he encountered at Buchenwald. Several weeks after that conversation, we found ourselves at my in-laws' house, where there is a thick photo album of my wife's grandfather's photos taken in the winter and spring of 1945. I also want to add that this is not a story that he talked about when my father-in-law was younger. In fact, it was nearly 50 years later to the time that he first described these moments to his family. Following our Passover Seder, my daughter desperately wanted to look through the photos, as she had to share a presentation about the book for her English class. And what was a watershed historical moment of the 20th century suddenly became personal to her in ways she could not have imagined. And then I decided to Google the date of Buchenwald's liberation. It was April 11th, 1945. We were looking at those photos on April 12th, 2025, perhaps exactly 80 years to the day when they were originally taken. Not all of us have personal connections to the Holocaust. Not all of us are descendants of survivors or liberators, but all of us, we are human beings. And we can look at history with the lens of a human heart, and we must be obligated to ask why. Never stop asking why reads a large sign outside the United States Holocaust Monument and Museum in Washington, D.C. And as my daughter was doing her research online, she wanted to learn more about Elie Wiesel's number that had been tattooed on his arm. And she came across a website that said the number was fake and contained all sorts of information that the number A7713 never existed. Why, she asked, why would it say that? I had to then explain to her that there are people in the world who deny that the Nazis took away the human dignity of an entire people just because they were Jews. How could his number be fake, she wondered. The photos of my wife's grandfather, my daughter's great-grandfather, the testimonies of the survivors, their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren live on as a testimony to the horrors and the death and the infinite trauma that so many have carried on their souls. Elie Wiesel was famous for teaching that hearing the story of a witness makes you a witness. And today we become witnesses as we commemorate the 6 million murdered because they were Jews, along with the 5 million others who were persecuted for their identities or political beliefs. Together we bear witness so that the world will always know that we must treat every soul with the human dignity they deserve. The Holocaust was a moment in history that is defined by radical evil. It began with laws marginalizing the Jews and continued with a pogrom, Kristallnacht, in November of 1938. And the Nazis took that further. Pogroms had taken place throughout Europe for centuries prior, but the Nazis turned the small, evil moments into large-scale mass murder with the intent to annihilate an entire people. Whether Jews were killed by gunshot at the ravines in Ukraine or the gas chambers at Auschwitz, the Nazis sought to destroy. Throughout history, we as a Jewish people have fought for our right to exist. In many moments, we feel marginalized and told we don't matter. We've had to change our names to fit in with the larger society. We've been told our holidays are less important. Our Torah isn't sacred. We've been told we were not welcome at golf clubs, beach clubs, and on college campuses. In so many instances, we have been rendered powerless. But perhaps our power and our blessing is for a rabbi, descendant of Holocaust survivors, and in the subsequent generations, to be able to stand here in City Hall and share our story. To speak the memories that live in our soul is an act of resistance against those who murdered our ancestors. The Holocaust was the most evil moment in world history and Jewish history. For the students who are here today, let this not be the only experience you have with someone or something that is Jewish. We do more than remember our past. We live a vibrant life in which out of Torah emerge sacred values, and through our holiday celebrations emerge sacred joy. Through all that, we feel a deep connection to Jewish communities around the world, whether they are in Brooklyn, in Buenos Aires, in Barcelona, Brussels, Beersheba, and Be'eri. As we share these sacred memories today in our hearts, we carry the words Am Yisrael Chai. Out of the ashes and the smoke of the concentration camps, the Jewish people will live. It is now my honor to call upon survivors and their descendants to light our Yom HaShoah candles. First, I would like to call upon Sophia and Edgar Karpovich. Sophia, born in Vinnytsia, Ukraine, and Edgar in Kyiv, Ukraine, and came to the United States in 1992. I'd now like to call upon Mila Freivert, born in Kyiv, Ukraine, came to the United States in 1991. Now like to call upon Tom Saltzman, born in Tallinn, Estonia, who came to the United States in 1991. Fourth candle will be lit by Avram Bulkovstein, who was born in Gomel, Belarus, and came to the United States in 1994. The fifth candle will be lit by Linda Zielinski, who was born in Vienna, Austria, and came to the United States in 1951. Our sixth candle will be lit by Professor Gideon Frankel, who was born in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, and came to the United States in 1948. Now, we turn to 5 candles representing the 5 million others who were murdered in the communities from which they came and were persecuted. I call upon Mike McGuire, representing those who have disability, to light the first candle. I call upon Jose Rodriguez, representing the LGBTQ community, to light the second candle. call upon Barry Pickett to represent the union workers and light our third candle. I call upon Jewish war veterans past National Commander Herbert Greff to represent our liberators and prisoners of war to light the fourth candle. I call upon Johnny Oak, representing the Roma community, to light the fifth candle. Johnny is unable to be with us today, and lighting in his place is Debbie Sugarman. Call upon Council Member Reverend Nancy Deakauer to share with us words of Martin Niemöller, pastor, First Day Cape.
Before I read the poem, I want to share that I had a personal connection here with our speaker. My father was a GI in World War II, and he was sent to the displaced persons camp in Poland to help. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
At this time, I would like to ask everyone to rise either physically or spiritually as we share the words of a traditional morning prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Mamromim, Amsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות 6,000,000 אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו על קידוש השם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר אמן. Fully compassionate God on high, to our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. They will rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen.
You may all be seated. Thank you, Rabbi Kellner, Nancy Day Akauer, and to all of our candlelighters. We would also like to offer our sincere thanks to those who have provided support and contributed to help make this program possible, including Gail Gray of the Columbus Department of Neighborhoods, Debbie Sugarman, Chair of the Holocaust Education Committee at JewishColumbus. We'd also like to thank Kroger for providing flowers for our ceremony that we'll use at the conclusion. And I'd also like to thank our sign language interpreters that have both helped here today to provide that assistance. Special thanks to all the schools, teachers, and administrators who continue to educate about the Holocaust and help facilitate the students' participation here today. We can never take for granted the moral compass of our society. We must strive personally, as a city, and as a nation, never to lose this moral compass. The experience of the Holocaust teaches us that we must continue to be vigilant in this regard. It is particularly fitting in today's world to reflect on the potential for each one of us to make a difference. For the conclusion of our program, we will walk to the Battelle Memorial Park to the Freedom sculpture created by Alfred Tibor, also a Holocaust survivor that was a member of our Columbus community. We hope that you will join us there for a moving rendition of Taps performed by Fire Chief Battalion Michael Vedra. As you leave, please take a flower and place it at the base of the sculpture. There are golf carts available for those that might need assistance. You can take the elevator to the basement level, and there will be people there available to guide you. I thank you all for being here for today's program. Thank you.